So we're going to start off with like the very basics here, starting with how to hold the small sword. Touche doesn't, actually, before we begin, let me do real quick intro of me. I'm Justin, I'm from Boston. I run Boston Academy of Arms up there. We are the baby behemoth school and classical fencing school. We're doing rapier, small sword, saber, foil, all that kind of good stuff. I've been fencing for about 15 years, primarily rapier in the SCA, and then HEMA more like the past 5 or 6 years. Just passed my instructor of arms certification through the Sonoma State Fencing Master Program this summer, so that's really exciting. So I'm really excited to kind of work with you all with Touche, which will be really fun. A couple of things about Touche. You might have noticed if you looked at any of the plates, it's a very deep lunge and passing lunge. It's a very athletic type system. If you can't get that low, it's fine. Don't hurt yourself. Some things might not work if you can't get underneath your opponent's hilt. We will make adjustments on the fly. I will try to do my best to show you how it works in the book. And if you're like, hey Justin, I can't get that low, I'll give you something else to do, because good fencing, there's always something we can do depending on the situation and stuff like that, right? So like, just don't kill yourself. Again, like Pat said, you know your body's better than anyone else. Be smart here. We got a long day today and tomorrow. I want everyone to get through this weekend being excited and not coming home with injuries. I want someone to go home with prizes, not injuries. So Touche doesn't explicitly say how to hold the small sword in his book, but he kind of shows it as like more or less holding the thumb kind of resting on the top of the flat of the ricasso, and the index finger somewhere underneath. Actually, he's probably not even in the ricasso because he almost looks like he's kind of a little bit further back, but he doesn't post, right? He's not holding down the pommel. He's somewhere by the end of the grip, maybe even on the ricasso, so kind of like there-ish. Depending on your small sword, you may not be able to hold your weapon like that. Hold the weapon however you need to for it to be comfortable, because we all have different type weapons here. Like I got an Italian foil, so I can do my 2 fingers just fine. Some people might not even have a ricasso at all. So if you don't, just hold the weapon how you normally can. And again, we'll make any adjustments as we kind of need to. He's got 4 primary guards, and these are very much more rapier-esque than small sword. So if these feel a little foreign, it's because these are really coming from the earlier. Also, people can come over here too if you don't want to be blinding by the sun here as much. I can kind of turn. So, because Touche's end of the 17th century, we're kind of transitioning from the rapier to the court sword or small sword. We got this weird transition period where some actions are very small sword-esque and some of them are very rapier-esque. So if you studied both weapons, a lot of this would be like, ah yes, this feels familiar in just a slightly different context and stuff like that. But his guards, he's got prime or first, which is basically knuckles to the sky here. This is his first, not like what we see later on where we got these 2 different types of first. This is basically you've drawn your sword, so it's the first position that you end after drawing the sword. So we got prime. Second is palm down, so your true edge is facing to your outside. We have third or tierce, which is knuckles down. We got quart or fourth, which is palm on up, protects your inside line. And then he has quint or fifth, which he doesn't really like. It shows up in his book, but he's like, this isn't really a guard because it doesn't actually protect you. But when he does some volts and voids, sometimes you can kind of attack in that particular hand position. We're primarily going to be doing second and fourth and a little bit of first. We're not going to really use fifth at all. And tierce is really just for when you're on guard. So again, we got prime, second, tierce, quart, and quint. So it's kind of like you're moving around the clock basically. Your true edge faces a different part all the way around.
And the arm adjusts with those? Or
a little bit, yeah. So the hand position turns and my arm's going to turn a little bit with it. It's kind of like I'm kind of rotating at the elbow. So I'm not really moving at the shoulder. It's not just the wrist. But like as my arm goes around, it's going to kind of go around with it. So prime is protecting my head, right? I'm underneath it. Second is kind of at shoulder height. Tierce is kind of at shoulder chest height. Quart is also shoulder chest height, and then it goes back on up. A lot of Touche's guards and parries, everything's pretty extended. We're not like way back here. Everything's very far forward if you look at the book and stuff. All his parries are pretty arm extended. All his basic guards are all very arm extended and stuff like that. So if your arm gets tired because you're not used to holding out even just a few ounces or grams in front of you, that's kind of why and stuff. And a lot of these actions really only work if the person has a high sword. If we're way down here kind of gunslinging, it's really hard to avoid underneath someone's sword that's down by their knees and stuff. So if something's not working, as a training partner, check, be like, is your sword at the right height? Because if not, that's going to really change the actions that you're going to want to do and all that kind of stuff. All right, we're going to go over the salute. So it's a very simple salute. He mentions that like every school has their own salute. It's really up to the master, but he gives his, so we'll talk about what his salute looks like. So we're going to start off in what's basically like a really wide first position, right? If you've done any kind of classical fencing, we got these different first positions. He's a little bit wider. The sword is basically like it's in the sheath. Step one is you're going to draw this into prime. Now we're going to do a moulinet around your inside while taking a half pass with your back foot, ending in third, and then you get en garde. We'll talk about the en garde stance here in a second here. Yeah. So again, first position, we got 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. This is my bad Italian kicking through. I gotta be more upright here with the offhand here. Yeah. So now they're on the stanza. So his weight is a little bit more back weighted. If you need to be center weighted for health reasons or because your back leg starts to burn after 5 minutes, that's fine. But this is still very back weighted. I want my opponent's sharp blade as far away from my face as possible, right? So I'm trying to keep my vital organs far away here. Knee is still tracking over the toe. Back arm is kind of elbow is kind of at like a 90-degree angle, and the arm is pointed to the sky here. If you catch me doing this, it's because of like my Italian background. This is how it is. I don't really care. This is an aesthetic thing. So if you care about aesthetics, this is where you kind of want to be. But if you start doing other stuff, not kind of the end of the world. Hand is in third or tierce, which is a little bit different than a lot of small swords, which is more like in fourth and stuff. Again, if this doesn't feel comfortable with your weapon, you can stay in fourth. That's perfectly fine. But third is his basic stance here. Cool. So I'm going to do one more time from the salute into our right into our stance here. Good. Up. So we got 1, 2, and 3. Good. All right. Yeah. He wants you to be really profile, which is probably why this back arm is back here. He talks about this a lot in his parry section. We talked about hand parries. He doesn't like hand parries because it brings everything forward, and now I'm a bigger target, right? If I'm here, I'm nice in profile. If I bring this arm forward, my left side becomes closer to my opponent, and also the hand is very easy to hit, but also more target. So yeah, he wants you to be as small as you can, and that also depends. So I like to practice this in the mirror sometimes. I just stand in front of the mirror and find out where that back shoulder needs to be for me to be profile. Also, if people have like larger chests, getting super profile doesn't necessarily make you any more smaller of a target. So you kind of like look in the mirror, you can kind of find out where that sweet spot is for where you're the smallest, where you can also be comfortable in moving around and stuff. Yeah, that was a good question. So next up, we're going to talk about the lunge, so people can kind of relax here. So again, his lunge is very deep. He's basically almost trying to drop his groin to the ground and stuff. To get down as deep as you comfortably can, you need to be able to recover back from the guard, right? If I do this giant lunge, but I can't get out of this, not a good lunge, right? So make sure that whatever you're doing is you can comfortably get out of it and stuff like that. This lunge is very powerful, it's very violent, it's an explosive motion forward. It's not just a small little step here. He talks about when you attack, you want to put be swiftness and power behind it, right? So this isn't just a small little step, this is an explosive action coming forward. So if we get on guard here, we're going to do, we'll do an attack in fourth. So as we extend, we're going to put our palm on up. Sword is about shoulder height. I'm going to do an explosive push off my back foot while stepping with my front foot. And what he shows is that his back foot actually rolls in some of this stuff. Again, if that's bad for your ankles, don't do it. This is a bad habit of mine, so Touche would like this for me. And arm is nice and straight. Yeah, good. And then to recover, I'm going to push off my back leg while pulling with my front leg, just like we did that side-to-side lunge. Good. A little thing that he doesn't talk about, but it shows up in his plates, is that when he lunges in fourth, his back palm hand is up, and when he's in second or first, his palm is down. He doesn't explicitly say that, but it's a little thing that you kind of notice while going through the plates. Again, that's not going to change how you fence it up. If you really care about the aesthetics and trying to embody Touche as best you can, that's the kind of thing you can kind of play around with, especially if you've done a million lunges and you're like, yes, a lunge, I know a lunge, this is good. So just do like 5 or so more lunges, play around palm up here in first, recover, and then do palm down in second, and recover on back here. A couple of things, when we lunge, we want to make sure that our knee and toe are pointing forward at our opponent, try to make sure that we're not, the knee's not collapsing. We don't want any knee injuries. Good. Yeah, do you mind coming kind of? So I've seen video of you, Fez. I know you can get super deep here. Yeah. He's going to have you a little bit higher. It really depends on how deep you go, right? The deeper you go, right? So if you just hold on here, right? Like if he's attacking me, he needs to protect himself from my blade. So the lower he goes, the higher that hill's going to be. If he doesn't have it, if you recover, if you have like a more moderate lunge here, right? He probably wants this thing maybe a smidge lower. So the hill's going to really depend on where my sword is and how low he gets and stuff. Things he does talk, good, recover, thank you. Things he does talk about is when you lunge in fourth, he likes to be a little bit more upright. And when you get further to second and first, you lean a little bit further. When he's lunging basically in first here, he's basically doing this almost like a pasada soto, a pass underneath or a void. And sometimes in second, he's also voiding underneath. Sometimes he's high. In fourth, he's a little bit more upright here. I have my bad habit from all my rapier time of always kind of hinging forward, but he likes his fourth a little bit more upright. But the further you go from second to first, the deeper you get and stuff. So yeah, thanks for pointing out. That was also a good question. So he does a lot of attacks on the lunge. He also does attacks on the pass. In his plates, he shows basically all the attacks with lunge and with the pass. What's nice about the pass is that in theory you can attack further distance. That really comes, in practice, it really depends on your hip mobility and your balance and stuff. But assuming that you have good hip mobility and good balance, you can travel a lot of ways and strike with the pass. Because your distance on the pass is based off your front foot, where the lunge is based off your back foot, right? So if my front foot is further forward, I'm going to be able to cover more ground in theory than on my lunge, which is behind the front foot. But the downside of the pass is that it takes a longer time to complete compared to the lunge and stuff, right? Some masters like you to use the pass when your opponent's retreating away from you when you're really close. Touche uses it to approach your opponent to hit them while they're coming towards you and stuff. So any of the drills we do today, you can kind of play around with both of them and kind of works on distance and depends on your distance. But again, if we get on guard here, how to do the passes, again, we're going to extend with our blade forward, roughly shoulder height. For now, worry about the height better when you actually against your opponent. You're going to shift the weight forward to that front leg, and when you feel like you can't lean anymore, you're going to push off that foot and take this nice step with the back foot. So ideally, I want my back foot, which is now in the front, to be kind of open here. This is a little bit less stable. A nice open hip. This is much more stable. I can kind of hang out here all day, order a pizza, be nice and comfortable. So nice wide open hips, kind of resting my weight over that my rear foot or my left foot as a righty. So I'm trying to get as nice in profile as I can here with my sword and off arm. So this can be a little tight, a little tough if you have tight hips. Just trying to get that twist. Back leg, or my sword side leg now, is I'm looking for a triple extension of the ankle, the knee, and the hip here. Right, so I don't want to end up with this bent knee. I want to get nice straight knee. That means I'm using all the energy on that leg and stuff. So one more time. Extend, lean, push. And again, I want to make that push to be as violent and as explosive as I can. It's kind of like a flesh, yeah. He doesn't really talk about running past your opponent on it. He kind of like stops at that. But yeah, it is like a proto-flesh. Like the passing, all those passing attacks were basically just proto-fleshes and running attacks and stuff, yeah. Yeah, it's going to depend. Like he's got some deep passes where like I can't even get down there, but like, Yeah, he gets super low even on some of those passes and stuff as well. Yeah, my pass is much more upright. I have tight hips, so I can't get super low. So it could be either or. Right? From here, from the strike, I can recover on back, or I can charge forward and like start grappling with my opponent. He talks about that you can recover or move forward to seize your opponent or seize their blade. He also likes if you can hit them twice before getting out, that's good too. So at some point we'll play around with hit, and then kind of leave and stuff. But yeah, but from here, either forward or back. So when I'm practicing this, I'm practicing both. So to recover backwards here, I'm just shift my weight back to that sword leg. So I just kind of reverse my operation here. So I kind of shifted my weight back. But yeah, if I'm recovering forward, just bring that sword side foot back forward, and now you're basically on guard again. Cool. Hey, we're going to do some footwork. He lists 4 advancing footworks and 4 retreating footworks. A lot of these are going to be pretty familiar. He doesn't give them any special names. He just calls it the first advance, the second advance. But I'll use a bit more classical or modern fencing terminology to kind of make things a little bit easier here. So the first one is just a natural pass, basically just a passing step, where I just bring my back foot in front of the front foot, and then my front foot back, so I'm back on guard, right? Just nice and easy, boom. And then he also has the retreat opposite, so I'm just bring my front foot behind the back, and then retire the back foot. So it's just basically a funny walk. It's much smaller than the passing attack, right? We're not attacking, we're just trying to move distance here. Touche uses this for when you're really far out of measure to approach your opponent, but you don't want to do these when you get really close, because you're going to be a little bit more accessible to getting hit because of this longer tempo of that footwork happening and stuff. But if I'm fighting Tim, he's really far away, I can take a couple of steps forward, and as I'm getting closer, then I want to start shifting to other footwork. So when we do some drills, when we start out of measure, you can start way out of measure and kind of just practice some passing steps and stuff as well. And then retreating steps, again, if I'm trying to get away from my opponent really fast, retreats can be really good. Just gotta be mindful of the ground, right? Like brickwork, some of the bricks might be up. I don't want to trip myself. So like don't drag your feet. Grass also, make sure you're picking up your feet with this kind of stuff. So that's just his past natural advance. His second advance is his preferred, which is a gathering step or a gaining step. So we're going to bring the back foot to the front foot, and then the front foot goes forward. This is how he prefers you to advance. A lot of us are probably used to front foot, back foot, but he actually wants back foot, front foot. And the reason being is that when I take my back foot going forward, I haven't really brought my target closer to my opponent, but I have stolen, I don't know, like almost 2 feet of distance from my opponent, right? If this is my lunge for my normal on guard, if I gather that, right, I can kind of surprise my enemy with a lot of distance and stuff. So he likes this gathering stuff because I can still measure for my opponent without really bringing my own target forward. And once I'm here, now I can bring my sword foot forward again. So gather and then advance. And I can also do this in retreat where I bring my front foot to the back heel. Again, this way I can, like, if my opponent's maybe pushing me a little bit, I can kind of hedge my bets here in case I want to come back forward. I still haven't given up a lot of offensive measure, but I still brought my target further away from my opponent here. And then I can bring the back foot forward. So this is probably going to be the weirdest of a lot of the footwork here. So let's spend a little bit of time just practicing gather step, advance, and then opposite gather or retreat gather. As a short fencer, I love gathering steps, gaining steps, because I can't hit. Most people I fence are usually taller than me. So being able to kind of just gather and go is a nice way of gaining some distance on my opponent.
It's a good way to load that back.
It is, yeah. So So if I'm kind of doing like a gaining on the lunge, I can go, boom, right? I can basically, as soon as that back foot lands, I can just explode forward, which is really nice. So it's almost like it's a cool kind of like tempo with the gaining step on the attack. And I usually do that gaining step with some kind of blade action, because they don't see this back foot happening. They worry about what the blade is doing. I do this a lot with rapier, where I'll go from forward stance to a refuse stance, and they don't notice that shift in the footwork because they're worried about, oh, what's this weird guard change? So same thing with small, so I can do like a disengage, or I can do a transport or something with that gaining step, and they haven't realized I've just stolen about 12 to 18 inches of measure on them. The thing to keep in mind with this gaining step is that it depends on the width of your stance. If I have a really wide stance, I gain a lot of ground on that gaining step. If you have a very moderate stance, you don't gain as much. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as well when doing this. If you're like, man, I don't feel like I've gained a lot of measure, it could be because you already have a narrow stance, right? I can only go so far from here. Cool. Next is just our regular advance. We'll kind of go through this a little bit quickly so we can get to some more fun stuff. It's just front foot, back foot, right? And these can be nice and tiny. I like tiny advances. A lot of people like to take these giant steps forward. That's a big tempo that I can hit my opponent in. Smaller steps means I can run away real quick if I need to. Big step means I can't go anywhere until that foot lands and stuff. So really kind of focus on tiny little advances and then tiny little retreats or bigger retreats. So practice these, practice the size of these steps. Do some big, do some small, change up the tempo. All right. He also has circular steps. This is basically used if you want to like gain advantage of terrain, like the sun, right? If you guys don't, if I'm fighting you and you don't like where we're at, you do circular steps, so now I'm facing the sun. Or if there's a divot that I want Pat to fall into, I can kind of finagle and move. So you got a quick announcement?
You need sunscreen.
Sunscreen.
Right.
Thank you. So these circular steps, they can be done starting with either foot, right? So I can go left with my left foot. I can go I can go left with my right foot. I can go right with my right foot. I can go left with my right foot. These are all perfectly good options. I'm really just trying to move at a point where I have an advantage of terrain against my opponent here. Not super useful in the saddle necessarily, but if we're fighting outdoors and stuff, on the hill, do I want to be on the top of the hill or the bottom of the hill? Do I want to put sun in my opponent's eyes? I know we think about small sword in this era fencing, like very honorable kind of stuff. If I'm in a duel, this is a fight to the death here. I want to give myself every advantage as possible. If that means I put the sun in Amy's eyes, that's her problem, not my problem. She's got to get out of that. So we're not going to use these a ton in the drills, but something to kind of play around with when you're doing pickups. Yeah. Cool. And the last footwork here is a jump back. This can be done from the lunge or from on guard. Again, if explosive action isn't good for your knees and stuff, don't worry about doing these, but just kind of know that they exist. So from on guard, I'm basically going to bend the knee just a little bit and just literally hop back. It's kind of like a backwards ballester. Yeah, he doesn't do these forward. He just says these. He just has these in the retreats. Also, I can do it from the lunge where I recover back and then hop back. So I can kind of use I can kind of use the momentum, recover myself backwards here to gain a little bit more distance here. Yeah. So when I recover back, my sword's the last thing I'm going to recover forward. I'd rather my opponent try to like run onto my point, so I don't want to bring my sword on back until the last possible minute here. All right, it's 10:30. Let's get suited up, grab some water, and then we'll get into some partner drills.